Everyone. Good morning, good morning. Just waiting for everybody to join us. Is everyone in, Molly?
Yeah, that looks like everyone. Thank you.
Everyone's here. Well, good morning again and welcome to our Kent Invicta Live event. Delighted to have you all here with us this morning. Just to introduce myself, my name's Victoria from the Kent Invicta Chamber. I'm in membership and hosting today. With me, we have our lovely Molly Hall, our queen of events. So she'll be helping to facilitate the event today, you know, our little tech wizard, really. Today we are so lucky to have with us Dan, David and Stephen from the DWP, the Department for Work and Pensions. So they will guide us through today's very important topic. Are you disability confident, and supporting visible and invisible disabilities in the workplace? So good morning to you three. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent.
Morning.
Okay. Morning. So then there must be so many misconceptions around hiring people with disabilities and concerns. So really interested today in this presentation and to see how, you know, committed you are and supportive to these customers. So employers are more confident moving forward, really. So any questions that anyone has, please use the chat facility, but there will be a Q&A session at the end. So over to you guys to take over the stage. So first of all, I think it's over to Dan.
It is. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if I introduce who I am, so I'm Dan Broomfield from Department for Work and Pensions. I am a district operations manager for Kent District. And I have the pleasure of also leading on health and disability agenda for the district. And obviously a large part of that is about how we support those customers into sustainable employment. And that's obviously one of the big reasons why we're sitting here today. I would like to thank the Chamber, Molly, Paul and yourself, Victoria, for facilitating today's meeting. It is absolutely fantastic to have this opportunity to really talk about this agenda and how we can work together with employers on that. So I just want to put a little bit of context to this, if that's okay. So you all would have heard, I'm sure, on the national news about the fact that, you know, we're looking at sort of record unemployment levels under 4%, which is absolutely fantastic. But I'm sure as employers, I'm sure you're also aware of the fact that we're also struggling to actually fill a lot of our vacancies. And this is quite a unique dynamic to have in what is a recession or soon to be. So that is quite an unusual situation to have, where we're talking about record unemployment, low levels, but then we're talking about the fact that we can't actually fill our vacancies. So, you know, that is really kind of what we're going to be talking about today in terms of how we can support you as a community in kind of bringing the two together, bringing customers together with employers to actually make sure that we fill those vacancies. And this is all part of a bigger picture, really, in terms of the government's strategy, which is very much about trying to increase the number of people that are economically active. Because what we're seeing is, whilst there are record low unemployment levels, we're actually seeing an increase in the number of people that are registered as economically inactive. And there's a big reason for that, and that is, in a nutshell, the pandemic. Because really what we've seen as a result of the pandemic is we've seen a lot of people actually retire from the labour market and decide it's time to kind of move into retirement. We've seen a lot of people move into partial retirement, but also we've seen a lot of people that have been affected by the pandemic and are now registered as having a health condition and or disability. And, you know, one thing that I would throw out there is long COVID, because you're looking at 4 in 10 people that actually have have had COVID that will have long COVID, and that will have long lasting impact. And what we're going to be talking about today, hopefully you will see, is positive support to actually increase the number of people from the economically inactive into the economically active, because as part of the government strategy, we are just launching something called Start, Stay and Succeed. So that is about increasing the numbers that actually start work, increasing the numbers of people that are retained in work, because I absolutely appreciate that as an employer, retention is massively key, because if you're constantly needing to keep recruiting, that gets very expensive, and that's a real pull on your time. And we're going to be talking about actually how we can support that agenda. And Succeed, which is really about progression, career progression for people when they move into employment. So that's about really that kind of loyalty aspect where you're retaining somebody and they are developing and progressing within your own company rather than going elsewhere. So what you'll hear today from David and Peter will be around how we can actually support you. So when we talk about Start, you're going to be hearing about disability confident, and that really is a plea from us to you to actually sign up to this agenda and support us and work with us, and not be put off by employing somebody because they have a health or disability, and we'll talk a lot more about that. So that falls under the Start. In Kent, we've launched an initiative called Advance to Work, and that's very much about running recruitment fairs with employers and inviting along customers that do have a health and or disability. And as I say, linking the two together, like I said at the very start. So you'll hear about that today in terms of how we can support you with our time around your recruitment. And then when we talk about staying, you'll hear about what support is there, including financial support within access to work, to actually retain somebody who maybe is struggling within your workplace because of their health. So you can actually pull down funding to make adjustments within the workplace to retain that person. Because as I said, I appreciate it's a real pull on your resources if you have to keep recruiting. That doesn't make financial sense. So you'll hear about that as well today. Specifically, as part of the growth agenda in terms of getting more people into work, as I say, I lead on the health aspect of that, and I do believe, and I think Victoria touched on this at the start, there is a bit of a stigma there. If I'm being upfront about it, there is a lot of myth busting that does need to take place. And it's important for me that you understand that as an employer ourselves, DWP, we practice what we preach. And I can absolutely confirm that we do. As an operations manager, it's something that we're looking at probably on a daily basis in terms of reasonable adjustments to actually employ people but also retain people. And I would like to just give you one example, if you don't mind, which is one of my actual job centres. I'm responsible for 4 job centres in the district. One of my job centres has actually got 85% of its workforce registered as disabled. And I think that's really important for you to hear that this morning, because it is something I am very passionate about. But also from a business point of view, this workforce delivers fantastic performance for me. So, that is part of that myth busting that needs to take place. More we talk about it, more we have those open conversations, the more we break down those stigmas. And that really is the point of what we're doing today. But we're open to do as many of these as you need. We're open to talk to as many employers as you need. Really, really passionate about that. So just wanted to kind of put that out there, that we will be covering some myth busting today. And lastly, for me, I touched on the recruitment fairs that we can do under Advance to Work. We are really, really keen to work as closely as possible with the Chamber, with its members, to support your recruitments. We're open to anything, whether it's virtual, whether it's a face-to-face meeting, a physical jobs fair. We're absolutely open to any of that. And I firmly believe that when we work together, we can achieve fantastic things. And I think a real example of that is the thing that I was leading on in the district in the past year, which was Kickstart. So, you know, I know there were some downsides to Kickstart from an employer perspective in terms of some of the red tape and processes. I'll be upfront about that. But what I would say is that, one, a massive thank you to yourselves as employers, because we received massive support within the district in terms of sign up to Kickstart, but also we had 4,500 young people move into employment through the Kickstart scheme in Kent. And I think that's absolutely fantastic, life-changing stuff. And that is a real legacy. It's a legacy for what we've done in the department, but it's also a legacy in terms of how you've supported that as employers. You're very much changing those communities that you're based in. So, you know, that's big stuff. That's big stuff as far as I'm concerned. So that's kind of enough from me, because I could talk all day about this agenda, and I'm sure you wouldn't want that. So I will pass on to the guys to actually drill into the detail of what they're presenting today. And apologies that I can't stay because I am at a conference today, but I just wanted to say a massive thank you for your time, and I hope you find the session useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So over to you, David.
Oh, I love a good bit of technology, don't we? So just to introduce myself, my name's David Fulton. I'm a Disability Employment Advisor leader for South and East Kent. I'm here to talk to you through some of the figures that are out in the open and available, but in a context of disability confident, the DWP is really quite fascinating to see. So not to put them back to the coronavirus slides, but next slide, please, if that's okay. So the Disability Confidence Scheme, it does support employers to make the most of the talents that disabled people do bring into the workplace, and it provides employers with skills, knowledge, confidence, and it does also bring about those contacts as well to make sure that you can attract, recruit, retain, and develop disabled people in the workplace. One of the big things about this is that we make this scheme completely free. There is absolutely no financial investment involved whatsoever, and it's been developed with employers and with disabled people representatives based on the social model of disability. Now, the scheme will actually take you through 3 levels, from becoming committed to disability confident, to then being an employer of disability confident, and then being a leader of disability confident. Now, one of the big things that we did with this disability confident is that it ran in with the government's goals of making sure that we could employ 1 million more disabled people into work between 2017 and 2027. We had a 10-year timeline for this. The latest figures from Q1 of 2022 has actually shown that we've increased it by 1.3 million. So we are over our target, and we are halfway through the assessment period for it as well, which I'm sure you would understand that is a fantastic target that we've been able to actually go through. And we've based it around the Equality Act as well, the Equality Act of 2010, which you might know as employers, brought together 11 different pieces of legislation in order to make it nice and easy and convenient to follow. Sorry, I'm taking a strepsil. Now, in terms of the legislation behind those policy drivers, now there was 4.8 million disabled people in employment in the UK from Q1 of 2022. That's an increase of 460,000 people on the year, and an increase of 470,000 from Q1 in 2020. I think we can probably have a small guess as to what may have triggered that, with a pandemic coming in, a lot of mental health, as well as the long-term COVID effects that came through. We work with something called the Disability Employment Rate, and that rate nationally as it stood is 53.8%. Now compare that to people with no disabilities, that is 82%. So for disabled people, that's actually a small increase on where we were beforehand, but it does mean that the disability employment gap that we have is 28.2%. Now that's still a decrease from where we were beforehand, but naturally we want to make sure that that gap is as small as it possibly, in fact, we want it to really not exist at all, but we do need to make sure that that gap's coming down. The disability unemployment rate that we had was 6.6% in Q1 of 2022, compared to 3.2% of those who aren't disabled themselves. And if I can ask you to move to the next slide, please. So we've given you a little bit of context on the left-hand panel. 1 in 5 of the working age population is classed as disabled. One of the really big things that we talk about in this department is making sure that we're encouraging disabled people to bring the potential that they know that they have. We encourage applications from disabled people, and we know that it's really good for business. We know that it helps you to increase the number of those high quality applicants that are available to you. It creates a workforce that really reflects the diverse range of customers it serves and the community in which it's based as well. And we really want to make sure that the I suppose the source of additional skills that disabled people bring to the business, such as the ability to use British Sign Language, which could really result in an awful lot of savings. And one of the big things that comes out of conversations that certainly I've had with employers in the past is if we make adjustments for disabled people, that's going to cost an awful lot. However, what I will say is actually the cost of making reasonable adjustments to accommodate disabled people is actually really, really low. I think you'll see a slide coming up, but it will actually say that the average cost of an adjustment for someone with disabled people is about £50. 50 to 80 pounds is actually that average range. So you can see how small of an investment that might be, and you may be able to have some help with those costs, which I'm sure my colleague Steve will come on to, and they'll talk you through some of the things that you may be able to look at. And I'm going to run into the next slide, please, again, sorry. And we really want to talk about why actually being a disability confident employer actually really, really matters. You see some graphs that we got there that 1 in 3 of the working age population, they do actually have a long-term health condition. Now, long-term health condition is classed as something that's lasted or expected to last 12 months or more. We have 1 in 5 people classed as actually having a disability, and that's a long-term health condition that affects the day-to-day activities. And 8% of the working age population report having a severe disability, and that's long-term health conditions that significantly affect day-to-day activities. And the number is only going up at the moment. We're at 1.4 million more disabled people now than 8 years ago, and that's been really driven by the fact that people have started to report their health conditions, and there's been a surge in releasing the stigma with regards to talking about mental health as well. People are being far more open and honest about where they're coming from. We have 7 million working age people with a disability or a long-term condition, but only half of those people are in work themselves. And for us, it's really important to understand what we mean by disability. Disability, we know here in the job centre, it will take many, many forms, and a lot of those disabilities may very well be hidden disabilities, things like dyspraxia, autism, global development disorder, but none of that can ever stop that person finding and retaining suitable, sustainable and successful work going forward. And now I'm going to move on to the next slide. We've got a lovely video that we've got from the Lloyds Banking Group, but afterwards my colleague Steve will be talking to you.
Hello, I'm Lewis. I work for Lloyds Banking Group, and this is my guide dog Dexter. I am visually impaired. My sight has got worse over time.
I'm Ross. I work for Lloyds Banking Group. My disability confines me to an electric wheelchair. I quickly realised that my asset in life was my brain. I was never going to be a bricklayer or a chef. At the time of being offered the job here, I had another job offer, but Lloyds had shown me throughout the recruitment process how much they cared.
Lloyds Banking Group is a disability confident leader, the third and top level of being disability confident. It's not about doing it to be nice. For businesses who aren't disability confident, you're missing out on a really wide pool of talent, about a fifth of the population. It makes no business sense to do this.
Being able to display that symbol, that badge, helps the disabled person looking for the job identify for an organisation that is going to understand potentially what adjustments they need. They might understand the difficulties or the barriers and be more receptive. I've always been proud to work for Lloyds Banking Group. but I'm even more proud to work for an organisation that has a really strong diversity and inclusion agenda. Being a disability confident leader makes me feel confident both in our ability to support other disabled colleagues, but also for myself, it makes me feel secure in my job. It makes me feel that I work for a trusted employer who has got my best interests at heart.
Ecstatic to have joined this team, and I did think that.
Cool. So it runs on to the next video. So yeah, my name's Steve. I'm a disability employment advisor at Canterbury Job Centre, and I just wanted to start really with some misconceptions and some myth busting. So there's a lot of myths around employing disabled people. A lot of employers worry that things are going to be more expensive. I think most employers, though, I think they want to do the right thing, but maybe they're worried about getting it wrong, or they've just got some ideas that may not quite actually stack up with the reality. So I'll start with the first and probably the most common one, is that it's going to be more expensive to employ somebody with disabilities. And whilst it's true that some people with health conditions or disabilities may require reasonable adjustments or additional support, as David mentioned, the average cost of making adjustments is actually around about £80. It's not a lot of money at all. And anything any sort of substantial adjustments or adaptations that might be needed, we do have a scheme called Access to Work, which I do cover later on, which can help cover the cost of those for you. Next, so a job applicant has to tell an employer if they are disabled. But that's not the case at all. Under the 2010 Equality Act, there is no obligation for somebody to declare a health condition. So there's a lot of reasons why people may not declare their health condition. I think 1 in 4 of us will experience poor mental health within our lifetime. So chances are, people are already employing people with health conditions or disabilities. But the idea of disability confidence is that we really want to challenge this idea that that people don't talk to their employers about it. We'd like to create a culture where employers are open to having that discussion. I think as employers, we've all had situations where somebody's health has, they've hidden it away, and it blows up to be a big problem. Where actually, if an employer knew about it early on, they could put things in place to manage that, and it needn't become such a big problem. So the whole point of disability confidence is just generate these conversations so that we can give people the support they need to reach their full potential. Next, we have the idea that people with disabilities will have higher absentee rates than their colleagues. And this, again, it sounds like that's quite an obvious thing, but actually the stats don't actually meet up to that. A joint study between the employment site Reed and Disability Rights UK found that 90% of employers surveyed did not experience that. That just it wasn't really anything that they noticed. So the reality doesn't seem to match up with that common misconception. Similarly, there's the idea that disabled people are less productive. That same study by Reed and Disability Rights UK found that 85% of employers disagreed with that, and in fact, only 8% agreed. I think as well, people often they assume, they make a lot of assumptions, but people with health conditions are really fantastic at finding ways of making things work for them. Then we have, again, we touched on assistance, but people with disabilities require assistance, and yes, that is true. Sometimes they do, but with the right training and support in the beginning, the correct induction into the workplace, many disabled people can work unaided, and their health conditions don't have any impact on their work. And really, that's no different than onboarding any other employee. We need to have correct inductions in place. And then finally, we have health and safety procedure provides a legitimate reason for not taking on a disabled worker. Well, the Health and Safety Executive makes it really clear on this that health and safety law does not and should not be used to prevent disabled people from finding work. They in fact say that it must not be a false pretext to justifying discrimination. So, there needs to be a full risk assessment, before we can say no on the basis of health and disability. We can't just, say, oh, well, health and safety and close that, which kind of leads on to the next one, which is that once you hire somebody with a disability or health condition, it's really difficult to, discipline them or to sack them if they're not, meeting, their basic, contract. Contractual obligations. Well, actually, there is no special law under this. once you've hired somebody with a health condition disability, you would treat them exactly the same as any other employee, as long as you're not using their disability or health condition, in your decision making on that sort of disciplinary or dismissal action, then it's absolutely fine. Next slide, please. So it's already on there, it's fine. So benefits to hiring people with disability. So if we can go back one on the slide. Thank you. So there's lots of benefits to hiring people with a health condition or disability. My colleague Dan mentioned that the pool of talent is getting smaller and smaller, and yet we have more and more vacancies. So considering a new pool of candidates, widening that pool means that we can still recruit high quality staff. We mentioned misconceptions around things like productivity. There's also people have the idea that they're going to be absent from work more often, but actually another study by MenCup, who are a charity for people with learning difficulties, found that actually people with disabilities or health conditions are less likely to have time off work. So over a 2-year course, they found that the control group of employees had 1 to 6 absences. They found 0 within the disabled community in that study. And in terms of lateness, there was only 3 latenesses in the disabled group, whereas there's approximately 20 latenesses within the control group. So there's less absences, improving staff morale as well. So the gentleman in the video mentioned how included he felt, how safe he felt, and it's not just for your disabled employees, but your other employees can see that you're a company that cares about their employees, that you're doing the right things, that you're a positive force. It's really good for staff morale. And I mean, one of the other things that we hear so often from employers is that they want a creative thinker, somebody who can think outside the box, find new ways of doing things. And actually, who better than a disabled person? I heard this at a conference recently, that disabled people make the best creative thinkers, because when your life is full of adversity and trying to lead a normal life in a world that is designed for the abled person, you meet challenges every day, and you have to become creative and find new ways of doing things. So that disabled people can be a fantastic resource. Looking at reducing staff turnover, another study showed that the churn of staff, the average sort of employee at the moment, they last about 18 months in a job before they sort of they move on for something else, or they're seeking further employment. Within the disabled community, that churn is 8 years, so 18 months versus 8 years. I mean, that's a huge difference. And it's also just about doing the right thing, having your customer base reflect the community in which your business operates. 20% of the UK population approximately have a disability or health condition. Why would we choose to ignore them? Let's tap into that pool of talent. And next slide, please. So getting to sort of the meat of it, how this joining Disability Confident works. As mentioned, there are 3 levels: committed, employer, and leader. I'm going to simplify that and just call it level 1, level 2, and level 3. And really, how to distinguish them, I use this as a kind of a shortcut. Level 1 is signing up today to be a level 1 employer. Is about pledging to do the right thing, to be considerate of people's additional needs, to think about what you can do to now allow somebody with a health condition or disability to compete on a level playing field. Now, one of the other misconceptions that I didn't cover, but I'll cover now, is that people think that being disability confident means that we are prioritizing disabled people, that being disability confident means that you have to hire somebody with disability over somebody without it. And that's not the case. It's not about preferential treatment. It's about fair treatment. It's about removing the barriers so that somebody who has a health condition can compete on a level playing field. Ultimately, anybody that you recruit, if you're a disability confident employer or not, has to be right for you as a business. So this isn't about creating jobs for people with disabilities just because they are disabled. It's about recognizing the talent they have and giving them the tools to be able to succeed. And that's what it is. So level 1 is the pledge to do the right thing. Level 2 is you're actively recruiting disabled people, and I will cover the levels a little bit more in detail slightly going forward. Level 3 is that you're not just doing it, you're showing others how to do that as well. So you're encouraging others to join the scheme, encouraging others to be aware of what supports out there, to consider people with disabilities or health conditions. Next slide. So level 1, I'll talk about this one more in depth versus the others, because I think most people here aren't signed up just yet. So this is the start of your journey. So to join level 1, there is a number of commitments to. Oh, sorry, I've just lost my place on here. So yeah, you must commit to 5 actions and at least 1 activity. So the 5 actions are to ensure your recruitment process is inclusive and accessible. So that's allowing consideration for people with conditions, applying, allowing alternative formats, having large print, for example, or electronic applications. Level 2 is how you communicate your vacancies. So having your disability confident badge on display, using channels that will attract disabled people. So you can use, for example, you can use the job centre for your recruitment. We provide free recruitment services. So if you have vacancies to fill, I mean, the average cost of recruitment these days is around about £5 grand. If you speak to your local job centre, we have recruitment specialists, and we can match potential candidates for you. And then book them in an interview for you to come and use our premises to interview there. We can book them to come to you. There's a whole bespoke package there, but that's one of the many options. It could be using, there are specialist disability sites as well, like Even Break, which is a job searching site for people with health conditions. Then the third one is that you offer an interview to disabled people. So anybody who ticks the box to say that they consider that they have a health condition or disability and would qualify under the Disability Confidence Scheme, we have a guaranteed interview scheme for them, providing they meet the basic criteria. So again, this isn't about preferential treatment. This is about providing a level playing field to enable people to compete on that level playing field. And so we've just gone forward on the slide. If we can go back on the slide. Right. 4, anticipate and provide reasonable adjustments. So again, that is about considering what somebody might need. So if they're coming in for an interview, allowing them to bring a support worker if they need it, a British Sign Language interpreter. I'll come back to access to work, but they can access to work and pay for things like a British Sign Language interpreter at the interview stage. So it's about considering how you could accommodate somebody within the workplace. And then the last pledge is that you will support existing employees who acquire a disability or long-term health condition. So actually, I think 3/4 of all health conditions or disabilities are actually, that they develop whilst people are within of working age. I think we've all seen situations where somebody's health, within work deteriorates, and you get to that point where you're not sure if you can continue, this relationship. Or again, access to work, and indeed us as disability employment advisors provide free assistance to try and retain people. So if you need help with retention, please do get in touch with us. There will be some contact details at the end. But your final pledge under Disability Confidence is to support existing employees. So if somebody has a health condition, being open to working with them and finding ways to try and keep them in employment if it's appropriate. And then, in addition to your 5 pledges, you then offer at least one of the following. So you either offer work experience to somebody with disability, work trials, paid employment, that's really the big one, apprenticeships, job shadowing, traineeship, paid internships or supported internships, student internships, or something called a sector-based work academy. That's something that you would arrange through the job centre. We provide training, so for somebody to potentially join your organisation, provide sort of information and training with some work experience and a guaranteed interview at the end of it. Now, you only have to agree to offer one of those, and you'll notice that not all of those, only one of those is paid employment. So again, even if you're thinking, well, this sounds great, Steve, but actually we don't have any vacancies at the moment, well, that's fine. As long as you're willing to offer somebody, some job shadowing or work experience, then you can still sign up today. If we move on to the next slide. So level 2 is all of level 1 again, that still stays in play, but level 2 is effectively demonstrating that you're doing those things. So it's you fill out a template, which is like a self-assessment form, whereby we test those things. So each one of those pledges will essentially, we're asking for evidence that you're doing those things, and you fill out the template, and it's a self-assessment. And once that's all been sort of checked up, you'll then issue your level 2 badge. I see level 2 really as sort of a transition to go from level 1 to level 3, which is where you become a leader in that. Level 3, if we move on, is all of level 1. So you're keeping to those pledges. We can grab the next slide, sorry. So you're keeping to your pledges from level 1. You've shown that you're already doing those under level 2, and level 3 is you're still doing all of that, but now you're also helping support other organisations to move forward. You're championing, disabled people within your local business community. You're engaging with your supply chain, your networks. So, you're promoting this idea of being disability confident to, those partners that work with you, your shareholders, with, your subcontractors, and just trying to sort of, spread the good news. Hopefully by then as well, you've got people working for you. You've got great success stories, and you can really showcase that. Look, we've embraced this idea of being disability confident, and look at all the benefits that it's brought. Next, we have a little video from Coca-Cola. If we can pop that one on. No, sorry, I apologise. This is mine.
Hi everyone, my name is Tom Fishenden, and I am Communications and Fundraising Manager at Kent Mind, one of 5 different branches of Mind based across Kent. And I'd like to say a huge thank you to Stephen and the team at the Job Centre for inviting us to be involved in this, because this is a really important topic. At Kent Mind, we very confidently endorse organisations who are disability confident employers. It's so important to recognise that people with disabilities bring a wide range of diverse life experience to an organisation, much like any other member of staff. And I'm really proud to say that for Kent Mind specifically, lived experience of mental health within our organisation is vital. It enables us to better connect with our clients, better understand the challenges which they may be facing, and also better advise them about the ways in which they can access support. We're proud to support the Job Centre as they continue to encourage disability confident employers across our county. Thank you so much for being a part of today's discussion and for listening to Stephen's presentation.
So apologies about that. I had the video run the wrong way. But that's one of our local businesses that we've worked with quite closely, and the value that having people with disabilities and health conditions and mental health, it's a big one. When we think about disability, we so often think about physical disabilities, but I think mental health is such a big thing these days. We have huge numbers of people reporting poor mental health, and indeed, I'm sure huge numbers of people who are experiencing poor mental health and struggling who aren't declaring that. And again, it's why we want to encourage people to consider, being open-minded and having these conversations. I think we can really tackle the stigma and put things in place so that people feel more comfortable at work, and we can really get the best of people when we have the right things in place. Now, all through this presentation, I've really teased access to work. Access to work is absolutely amazing. This is really the glue that's going to hold all of this together, because we mentioned that the average cost of an adjustment is about £80, and yeah, that's great. That's very affordable for most organisations, I think. But access to work is there to provide the funding for adaptations, adjustments, or in-work support that goes sort of way above and beyond what we'd call sort of reasonable adjustments. So in essence, access to work is a pot of money of up to £65,180 per person per year. It's a huge amount of money to pay for any support needs, adaptations, or adjustment. That's the short version. The really difficult thing for me to do is to tell you exactly what they do, because they will assess that individual to do that job at that location at that time, and then look to provide whatever is appropriate. And the thing I find, I give presentations on access to work all the time, and I always get the question, somebody will go, well, we've got this person and they, well, we spoke to this person and they have this. Would access to work pay for X, Y, and Z? And my answer can only ever be, maybe. It's so bespoke. It's not a tick box exercise. It's not oh, Dave's got a bad back, so we'll give Dave this, and this. It really is down to what that person needs to do that particular job. But absolutely, I mean, the sky is the limit. So we can pay for physical adjustments, both in the office or for home workers, communication support, so British Sign Language interpreters, support workers. So that could be somebody who actually goes to work with somebody. So if you've got somebody with learning difficulties, it's to help them sort of, to get used to doing the job. So the manager can communicate to the employee and the work coach, and that person can sit with them and sort of get them up to speed on doing it. It can be having a mental health support, having a mental health care plan put in place with coping strategies, regular meetings to see how things are going and to reassess. Adjustments to vehicles, so if somebody needs adaptations to their vehicle to be able to get to work. It could be specialist software or adaptations to a computer or a point of sale. So if you've got, I don't know, if you're a retail outlet and you have your tills that need to sort of maybe adjusting for somebody who's maybe partially sighted, they can provide the changing for that. Transport, we've paid for people to have travel buddies if they're not confident getting on or off of public transport, either because of a learning difficulty or if they're not confident traveling because of like an anxiety thing. We'll have travel buddies go take them to work. But if the support is beyond that, it's also quite common that we'll have somebody picked up in a taxi, taxied to work and taxied home. The scope is huge on that. And the real key thing for me is we also provide the training. We don't just go, oh, here's this equipment, here you go, see you later. We will give you the equipment, and we'll give the employee the training on how to use that equipment to get the best out of themselves within that work environment. We can also do training for you as employers. If that person, the individual, is happy to, for this to happen, we can kind of go in and kind of introduce the colleague. So this is Dave. Dave's joining you on Monday. Let's say Dave's autistic, so he's really, really good at this and this and this. He's really detail oriented. He's fantastic. However, Dave does struggle in this sort of environment. That's why he has an office, in the corner with these screens, and just kind of explain, what the situation is, provide training on how to get the best out of working with Dave. Obviously, if Dave doesn't want that sort of level of, his dirty laundry aired in public sort of thing, that's his choice as well, and we'd respect that. But that's an option. It's one of the many things we can do. But the possibilities of access to work are huge on that. And I would say if there's any inkling that there might be any kind of support that Access to Work can provide, make a claim. 3/4 of all claims are approved in some fashion. So we want to use this funding is there for that. If you make a claim and they come back and say, actually, there's no support we can do, or we can't cover it for whatever reason, you're no worse off. Make the claim is my view. There's two sort of elements to Access to Work. If somebody's joining your organisation, the employee makes the application. Obviously, you can let them know about Access to Work and you can support them to make that claim. If you're working with somebody already, they've been with you for 6 months or more, and it's an existing employee, then you as the employer would make the claim, and we can work on a retention case as well to how to keep that person employed with you. So it's for people who are joining as well as people who are already working for yourself. The eligibility criteria is really simple. Be age 16 or over. We're not going to support child labour, unsurprisingly. 16 or over and have a health condition that creates barriers to employment. That's pretty much it. That can include self-employment, not terribly relevant to you guys, I know. It can be part-time, it can be an hour a week, it can be full-time, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that they have a health condition that's creating barriers to employment for them. And that's really Access to Work in a nutshell. There are specialist teams for apprentices. So if you have apprenticeships, there is mental health support for apprentices as well, but I can't say apprentices. But there is also general mental health support for the general population as well. But we specifically have identified that a lot of young people transitioning from the education system to the quote unquote real world, have really struggled with their mental health, and a lot of apprentices do drop out. So there is specialist support in place for that as well. That, in a nutshell, is Access to Work. I'm going to move on to that Coca-Cola presentation video that I thought was next before, and then I'll run through some quick resources, and then we'll have some questions.
Coke saw past the wheelchair and saw me and gave me the opportunity, then think to themselves, right, what can this guy in a wheelchair do? They thought, what can this guy do? My name is Mo, and I am a merchandiser for Coca-Cola European Partners.
Being a merchandiser is a really physical role with minimum amounts of adjustment. Mo's been able to not just succeed in the role, but excel in the role. I'm Nick Falkin, I'm a Senior HR Business Partner at Coca-Cola European Partners. I'm very pleased to be able to say that we are members of the Disability Confidence Scheme.
It was 18 years that I hadn't been employed. No one would ever see past a disability.
Just under 18% of the UK population have a disability. We want to be as diverse as we possibly can. We want to represent the society that we all live and work in. The Disability Confidence Scheme is a great way of reaching out to that community and that talent pool.
got a phone call from my hiring manager who offered me the position. It was just amazing. Like, I felt overwhelmed. I literally wanted to cry, but then I wanted to jump in excitement.
The Disability Confidence Scheme it's a series of commitments to make small changes to the way that we work, to the way that we support employees.
My name is Christine Southern. I'm a sales manager for Coca-Cola European Partners. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I was terrified that I was about to lose everything, and staying employed has meant the world to me. And they've really just offered me loads of reasonable adjustments that they can make to make my day-to-day life at work workable.
The process for signing up to Disability Confident is genuinely really easy. It's online, it is based, it is very, very straightforward. It's a free process. There's lots of support and guidance on the site.
Ever since I've been working, I'm not gonna lie to you, life's changed so much for me. Like, I have a sense of worth, and sorry, I get a bit emotional about this one. It's more like for so long where someone was told me that I couldn't do something, and then out of nowhere, you know, I work here, and it just makes me feel overwhelmed.
If I was going to give any advice to another organisation that's considering signing up to the Disability Confidence Scheme, it would simply be dive in, have a go. It is really simple, it is really straightforward, the benefits are enormous, you won't look back.
And we stop that.
Hello, I'm Lewis.
Thank you. So yeah, finding out more about the scheme, we're here. You know, you can get in touch with the email addresses at the end, but we have included a load of resources as well. So we've included the 3 packs that come with the different levels. So you know, if you want this presentation sent out, that information is going to be included on there as well. Next one. Sorry, next slide. There we go. We've also got some different guides on there, as well as you know, fact sheets around things like access to work. You know, a guide to reasonable adjustments. Join in the Disability Confidence Scheme today. If you sign up, you're also given access to sort of online webinars. You know, it's like a community of employers as well. So there's that training that comes with it. There's access to that information. And if in doubt, you can always reach out to Disability Employment Advisors. So we work obviously for the Job Centre, and we support our work coaches to support benefits claimants. However, we are also a community resource, Disability Employment Advisors, David and myself. You can reach out to us for advice about different things, and generally, you know, we might not have the answer right away, but we can go and find out. You know, we make so much of our job is about networking with partners and all different organizations. You know, please get in touch if you have other questions. We'll be happy to you know, to talk to you about, you know, anything. If we don't know the answer, we can usually find out. Next slide. We've included a load of videos as well. So 2 of the ones we've seen today are on here. So the Coca-Cola and the Lloyd's. And the next one. Yeah, it's going to start playing the videos.
Coke saw past the wheelchair and saw me.
Hello, I'm.
And there's also some videos on, you know, why to join the scheme, about some just more general information. And then finally, we should have any questions. So you've got the email addresses there. So Cheryl's one of our senior leaders. She was due to be here today, but unfortunately called away to another meeting. And we have 2 of our Disability Employment Advisor leaders. Any questions after today, if you think, you know, oh, I wish I'd asked that, or hang on, this has come up. In fact, my big thing actually from today is, even if we're thinking about access to work and we're thinking, well, everyone I employ, as far as I know, is all fit and healthy. That's great, and we hope everyone remains fit and healthy. Obviously, we don't want people's health to decline. But if going away from today, you come across somebody, either in your personal life or professionally, who could do some support to, you know, to get, you know, within work, all you need to remember that weird bloke from the Job Centre was bang on about something. Just know that there's something there, because we meet customers every day who've left their job because their health declined, who potentially could have had their employment saved if they'd had known about access to work. Unfortunately, not enough people know about it, and I think it's really important that we get the message out. So even if you remember nothing else from today, and I hope you do, but just remember that there is support out there, and please do just get in touch if you have questions. Yeah, so any questions, anybody?
Yes, Stephen, Maria Warren had a question. She's put on the chat, are you able to explain who is responsible for administering the A2W grant, i.e. does the individual keep track of spend from the grant or the employer?
It's usually the individual. There are different exceptions to that, so it depends on their ability to do so. Sometimes it can go to the employer, or it can go to a support worker or appointee, but typically it does, we try. The whole thing of disability confident and access to work is to promote independence and allow people to reach their full potential. So the whole point is for them to manage it, if they're able to do so.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Anyone else got any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
If I may, Vicky, yes.
Of course, Kaz. Kaz is from Kent Invicta Chamber as well. So thank you for joining us today, Kaz.
Well, thank you for letting me join you. Really, really important subject. Hello, everyone. To our keynote speakers here today, really moving footage. Well done, you. Tom Fishenden, we actually know from Mind. He's a chamber member, and I've never met him in person. So actually to see him speaking on camera was really, really nice. And I think, despite the low numbers here today, you'd be really surprised how many of our chamber members are really philanthropic in terms of wanting to level up and to maybe put back to the community in employing people. So this has been really useful for me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Victoria.
No worries at all.
If I can jump in there, I would just love to say that if you do come, even after this, if somebody mentions anything to any of you, please pass on our contact details. We'd love to talk to them about more. We see companies that aren't signed up to Disability Confident who have their own programs doing similar. We want to get those on board with us as well. So, and we know that so many employers are doing great work, and becoming disability confident is about getting the recognition for the great work that you're already doing. So we know employers are doing really good work, but we just want them to get that recognition added to the database so that people who are looking for an employer that's going to give them a fair chance and treat them fairly, that they know, that this is a one-stop shop where they can find that in theory. So please do, anyone you come across, just get them to get in touch and we can have a chat.
And in terms of who we are as well, that runs alongside this, the roles that we have here in the job centre, they're continually funded as well. So as much as we're coming in today doing this presentation, which is fantastic, and we've had all sorts of nightmares rehearsing and waking up in the middle of the night going, oh, stats. But one of the really big things is that actually we're a continuation of the great work that you are doing, and the work that we do is obviously there to help you. We're here to come back as many times as you want. Steve is our access to work and disability confident guru. We will talk your ears off for all of this at any point, and we can do this as much as you'd like us to do. We are not going to stop, I suppose, at that point, but we really wanted to make sure that if we're presenting to you today, we've got the essentials covered. Anything that you've got a personal interest in, we can deep dive a little further in later.
I did have a little nose before coming in, and I know there's a number of organisations that are joined up already. There's a couple of level 1s and some level 2s in the room. If you want support to move in level 2 to level 2 or or level 3, get in touch. We're here to support you as well. So just because you're already signed up doesn't mean that we're not here. Signing up isn't the end of it. It's supposed to be a journey, and we're here to support you every step of the way between the webinars and resources that are provided via the system. But the DEAs are here to to support that.
Stephen, David, there's one more question from Sue that was on the chat. So I'm the chair for the local branch of the ICE, and I would like to organise a presentation similar to this one today through our branch. Who do I contact to organise this?
I think Kaz might have just popped in the chat to say we'll ask Molly to connect you, which is fantastic. So what would be the most advisable thing is that on the PowerPoint on the presentation that we've got here, we've got the contact details for Cheryl, and Cheryl was somewhat instrumental alongside Steve with getting this organised, set up, and whatnot, which will be really, really interesting. If you email her at that point, we can, I suppose, at that point then delegate, see what availability is there. But I know that when we're doing these presentations as well, we've got to make sure that as many people are involved and as engaged as possible.
Yeah, there's one of us at least one of us in every office, every job centre. But Cheryl also oversees the whole of Kent. So if you go to sort of the Cheryl, she'll sort of filter down to whoever's sort of local to that person, and then yeah, maybe we'll get somebody who's makes less errors in a presentation than I did today. But
no, you did not, Stephen. You were great, fantastic. I must say, David, Stephen, thank you so much. In awe of your presentation, really. Real, eye-opening. Especially in regards to the misconceptions that we might that we might have. So and really moving, especially the Coca-Cola one that got me there a little bit.
Yeah, we saved that one for the end.
Yes, I know, and then I had to speak. So
there's very few things that sort of you watch sort of 5-10 times over and it never loses its effect, as much as we've sort of as much as we've presented it. But can I just personally on behalf of Steve, Dan I know had to run, but I want to thank everybody for coming in today, for taking their time out of their day to listen to us as well. Thank you so much, Molly, for taking control of the slides, and thank you everybody for coming in. I hope you've taken something away from all of this, and as I said before, we are more than happy to you as much or as little as you want, but hopefully as much as you want, to sort of help with that engagement with those employees and moving towards a more successful working partnership as well.
And if people want stuff in person as well, we can come out and talk to you in your offices. That's why every job centre has their own DEAs, so we can find somebody local to come out and have a chat and do stuff. If people find that more engaging, that's absolutely an option as well. And equally, you can come to us, meet us within the job centre. We can do all kinds of things. We're very flexible and open to different things, so if just get in touch. That's my answer to everything. If in doubt, just get in touch.
Excellent. Yeah, and saying that as well, if anyone did want to speak to myself and Kaz, or the team at the chamber, then we're happy to forward on your details and pass that on. But we will be sending the slides as well. And this has also been recorded, so when you do visit the website page under events, if you scroll down a little bit more, then there are webinar recordings, so that will be put on as well if you did want to watch this again. But thank you to all attendees today. Really lovely having you. I'm sure that you found this so insightful and useful. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And any questions, like we said, then please do get in contact. But thank you ever so much, everyone.
Thanks for having us. Take care.
Thank you, David. Thank